The Alibi Man Chapter 13. The obsolete suite in the Palm Beach County Medical Examiner's Building was never a place Landry enjoyed visiting. It was a necessary part of his job, mandatory to his way of thinking, though he could have passed this part off on Whis. Whis was like the weird kid in science class who wanted to dissect everybody's frog just because. But from the moment he was given the lead on a case, Landry became the victim's advocate. It was his job to get justice for that person, and in order to do that, he needed to know, to see with his own eyes, everything he possibly could about the victim, how she had lived, and how she had died. He stood on the side of the table opposite to me, in mask, cap, gown, gloves, and booties. All one could see of anyone in the room were their eyes. The me was Mercedes Geddon, acting chief medical examiner to be precise. The defection of her predecessor to a cushy teaching job at the University of Miami had opened a spot for Getson. If the powers that ran the county had any sense, they would give her the position permanently. See here, she asked, pointing into the gaping wound where the gator had taken a large chunk of tissue out of Irina Markova's lower torso. It's a section of the head of the femur. The gator snapped it like a chicken bone. The power in its alligator's jaws is unbelievable. Between 1,500 and 2,000 pounds of pressure, equal to the pressure of the weight of a small pickup truck. I'd rather be under the truck, Landry said. Amen to that. I did the autopsies on 2 of those recent alligator attack victims. That's not a good way to go. I can't even imagine the terror those people felt. I suppose the good news here is that our victim was already well past feeling anything when she was attacked by the second animal, that is, Gettin added grimly. She heaved a sigh and shook her head as she looked down at Irina Markova's face, the ravaged eyes and lips. These are the tough ones. I can slice and dice drug dealers and gangbangers all day long. They know what they're in for, doing what they do. This one is a pure victim. She didn't go out looking to cross paths with a killer. I knew her a little bit, Landry said, enough to say hello. She was an acquaintance of a friend. I'm sorry. You don't have to stay for this, James. I can call you later. No, this is part of it. She's my Vic. You know how I am. Superstitious? He shrugged, still staring at the body. I need to see what happened to them with my own 2 eyes. I feel like I owe it to them to be here. At least for this part, you know. Crazy, huh? Not so. Shows that you're still human. I always figured that the time I start just counting the bodies, not thinking of them as human beings, is the time I need to consider another career. I mean, I don't get emotionally involved. We can't do that and stay sane. But I do them the courtesy of knowing their names. Thanks for coming in for this one, Marcy, Landry said. He had known her personally to make the request. He'd known her for 6 or 7 years, had watched her work her way up the ladder. She was very good and very thorough. This wasn't going to be an easy case. Getting would garner every bit of information, no matter how insignificant it might seem. She wouldn't miss a thing. Oh, who needs to have a life, she said. Besides, the mayor of Wellington, the mayor of West Palm, the mayor of Palm Beach, the sheriff, the state's attorney, and half a dozen other big shots called me after you did. Landry gave a humorous laugh. Nobody cares when some Hoxalachi redneck gets his brains blown out. A beautiful young woman strangled and dumped. That's bad for tourism. Can't have a killer running around during season. Getting glanced at her watch and huffed a sight. Where the hell is Cecile? Where the hell is Cecile? Just waiting for you to scream, boss. Getting's assistant, a 7 foot tall black transvestite, came into the suite. Even on a stool, Getting had to crane her neck to look up at him. The process began with the external examination of the body. Getting spoke quietly into her microphone, identifying the victim, stating her age, height, weight, sex, color of hair. She couldn't state the color of her eyes because there was nothing left of them. Landry stared at the girl's hand, at her fingernails, still flawlessly painted, a vibrant red despite her time in the water. A couple of them were broken. Hopefully she had sunk them into her killer. Hopefully Getting would discover something to suggest that skin cells, a microscopic bit of blood, enough for something for a DNA profile. The body had been in the water for some time, but unless the fish had taken up giving manicures, well, there was a chance that something large well under the nails could still be there. The analysis of that kind of evidence took time. Serology, toxicology, and DA profiles. Real life isn't like television. Even with a rush out on the potential evidence, it would take days, even weeks to get results back. And even if they got a DNA profile on the perp, it would be helpful immediately only if the guy had offended before and was in the national data bank. Getting examined every inch of the girl's body. Every cut, every mark, every bruise was measured and photographed. Landry was hoping for bite marks. No defense attorney could argue away bite marks. They were as good as fingerprints. What do you think here? Bite marks? He asked, pointing to several dark semicircular marks around the roller on the left breast. He had put his reading glasses on and bent down close to squint at them. Could be, Getting said. The shape is right, but I'm not seeing clear individual tooth marks. Maybe he bit her through something like sheets or a light blanket to obscure the marks. Maybe he's smart. Maybe he's done this before, Landry said. That was a very bad thought. They wouldn't be talking about some random horny bastard who didn't want to take no for an answer. The crime wouldn't be about a situation that had gotten out of hand. It would be about something done methodically, which required organized thought and enough cool in the heat of the moment to take precautions against self-incrimination. Getting moved on to the ligature marks around the girl's throat. What do you think? Landry asked. A rope? A wire? First, Getting said, we have thumbprints on either side of the lanyards. See here? So we know her killer choked her manually at some point in the attack. But then we have the ligature marks as well. Not a wire. There's too much abrasion. It had to be something with texture. If it was a rope, it was quite thin. I'm not seeing any natural rope fibers, but she's been in the water. Fiber evidence is a lot to hope for. Or the rope could have been synthetic. Nylon cord, maybe. Looking through a lighted magnifying glass, she studied and studied the deep grooves cut into the girl's neck. The skin had broken in places. Huh? She said, as she took a tweezer and very carefully plucked a piece of something out of the wound. What is it? Dried, coagulated blood. Look. Landry looked at the scab through the magnifying glass. Stuck in it were several fibers so small they were all but invisible to the naked eye. Short, superfine, dark, almost like short hairs. The lab rats will have an answer when they can get it under a microscope, Getting said. I'm surprised you found anything, Landry said. Sometimes we get lucky. Her killer didn't dump her right away. The wounds had time to dry and harden. When Getting was satisfied, she had examined every inch of the front of the body. Landry helped Cecile turn the girl over. Getting moved Irina Markova's hair out of her way to examine the marks on the back of her neck. There weren't any. Okay, Getting said. Either there was something behind her and between her and the killer, or maybe the killer was on top of her, holding her down with the ligature. In my experience, the kind of guy who does this kind of thing wants to watch the victim's face as he chokes her, Landry said. The fear gets them off. Watching the lights go out in her eyes is a big power trip. Looks to me like he strangled her to the point of unconsciousness, then let her regain consciousness only to kill her all over again. Sick fuck, Landry muttered. He let her lie somewhere for quite a while before he dumped her in that canal, Gettin pointed out. With no heartbeat to move it through the circulatory system, the girl's blood had pooled down her back and the backs of her legs and arms in a huge purple stain. The body had remained on its back long enough that the blood had clotted and set, which took hours. No matter what had been done with the body after that, the lividity wouldn't move or change. Maybe he had to wait to dump her, Landry said. Or maybe he's one of those freaks that likes to play with them after they're dead. Landry stayed until Gettin was ready to make the incision across the top of the girl's head. The scalp would be pulled back and the interior examined for evidence of trauma. The cranium would be checked for fractures. He didn't need to hang around for that. He didn't need to wait for Gettin to make the primary wide incision across the chest and down the torso. He didn't need to watch as Irina Markova's sternum was split in two and her chest was cracked open like a clamshell. He didn't need to watch as her organs were lifted out of her body and wait. He had seen it all before. Everyone had a liver. Everyone had intestines. Everyone had a brain. None of that was of interest to him. The organs were examined in weight and notes were written down because that was procedure. But no internal disease or defect had killed Irina Markova. Someone else's disease had killed Irina. Whatever malignancy it was that took up residence in the minds of murderers. With that thought foremost, he went across the parking lot to the sheriff's offices and robbery and homicide. The interpreter is here, West said. They went into the interview room. West had exited. The older man standing at the end of the table wore no readable expression. His long face might have been carved from stone. Dressed in black, he was tall and narrow and wore a clipped, close white mustache and goatee that had been sculpted to a point just below his chin. His left eye was piercing blue. The white, milky white wound was left bare for all the world to see. No patch, no glasses to hide behind. The old priest put it out there like he was proud of it, like it was an ugly badge of honor. A scar split the eyebrow above it. Whist introduced him. Father Chenov, this is Detective Landry, who is also working on this investigation. Landry let the remark slide. He didn't need to whip his cock out and put it on the table in front of a holy man just to put Whist in his place. He held out his hand to the priest, who had quite a grip on him, for a guy who had to be in his 70s. His fingers were gnarled and twisted like the branches of an ancient wind-blown tree. Father Chenov, thank you for coming in on such short notice. Unfortunately, that's the only kind of notice we get at the start of a murder investigation. The old priest looked down his nose at him as they took their seats. Landry flashed back on Catholic school, where he had spent much time on his knees, saying Hail Marys for one sinful infraction of school rules or another, while Father Anard glared at him. This is a Russian girl who died. His accent was heavy, but his English was crisp. Yes, sir, Irina Markova. She worked on a horse farm outside Wellington. Do you know of any Markovas in the area? If she has family here, we'd like to contact them. The priest ignored the question. This one, he said, tilting his head in the direction of Whist, played for me the tape from the answering machine. Yes, are you able to translate for us? Again, the priest ignored the question as if Landry's agenda held absolutely no interest for him. This girl, she was a criminal? Not to my knowledge. Why? What does the man on the tape say? His name is Alexei. Yes? This one told me. Again, he tipped his head at Whist without bothering to even look at him. We believe so, yes. Why did you ask if the girl was a criminal? Play the tape again, please. Wiz touched the button on the machine, and the Russian voice spewed forth in staccato bursts. He says, "Why the hell have you not called me? Are you too fucking good for me now if you're fancy, soft American men? Don't forget who you are, Irina. Don't forget who owns you. I have a job for you to do. It will pay well, greedy girl." "Do you recognize the voice?" Landry asked. "There are many Russian men called Alexei," the priest said. "Do you have any idea which one this guy might be?" The priest looked around the room as if suspicious one or more of these men named Alexei might be hiding in a corner listening in. "Are you familiar with Russian organized crime, Detective Landry?" "I know about it." "Then I don't need to tell you these are very ruthless and violent men. They are a disgrace to our community. Not all Russians are criminals. But you asked me if I thought Irina Markova might be. There is a man, a very dangerous man. His name is Alex Kulak. He is a vicious wolf. This perhaps is his voice." "Do you know him?" Wiz asked. "Do you know where we can find him?" "I know of him. He is the kind of man who believes his own people and can do with them what he will." The bitterness in the old man's voice seemed personal. "Did he do that to your eye?" Landry asked. The priest sniffed. "No. KGB did this to me when I was a young man. They burned my eye because I would not be a witness for them. I watched a man steal 2 loaves of bread to feed his family. It was just after the war. People were starving. In my Russia, we fed only KGB. There were no criminals. Now there are many criminals and no KGB. It is not a better place." "Do you know someone who may be able to help us find Alex Kulak?" Landry asked. "I know someone," the priest said, "but he will not speak with you. If he's afraid, we can speak over the phone," Wiz said. "All we're trying to do at this point is locate this Alexei person." The old priest got up from his chair. He stood ramrod straight, a formidable figure in his black cassock and priestess collar. "He will not speak with you," he said again, "because Alexei Kulak cut out his tongue." Like, comment, and subscribe on this video. Bye!